October 15, 1987. Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso, the sound of automatic weapons shatters the afternoon silence. Africa's most fearless leader lies bleeding in the dirt, his body riddled with bullets. Thomas Sankara, the man they called Africa's Che Guevara, has been silenced forever. The enemies of a people are those who keep them in ignorance. He was only 37 years old. 4 years earlier, he had transformed one of the world's poorest countries into a beacon of hope and self-reliance. He had dared to say no to the West. He had dared to dream of a free Africa, but who really killed Thomas Sankara, and why did they have to destroy him to protect their empire of exploitation? Thomas Sankara seized power in Burkina Faso at just 33 years old, and immediately declared war on everything that kept African enslaved. This wasn't some corrupt African dictator enriching himself. This was a revolutionary who rode his bicycle to work, slept on the floor of his office, and cut his own salary to $450 a month. In just 4 years, he achieved what Western aid had failed to do in decades. He doubled wheat production. He planted 10 million trees to fight desertification. He built roads, railways, and schools with local resources. He made Burkina Faso food self-sufficient for the first time in its history, but that wasn't what terrified the West. Sankara banned female genital mutilation. He appointed women to high government positions. He was the first African leader to recognize AIDS as a major threat and speak openly about it. He renamed his country from Upper Volta, a colonial name, to Burkina Faso, meaning land of upright people. But most dangerous of all, he told Africa to reject Western debt, foreign aid, and neocolonial exploitation. He said Africa had everything it needed to prosper without begging from its former colonizers. They couldn't allow that message to spread. By 1987, Sankara had become the most dangerous man in Africa, at least from the perspective of Western powers and their African puppets. France was furious. Their neo-colonial empire in West Africa depended on keeping countries like Burkina Faso dependent and subservient. Sankara's success was inspiring other African leaders to question why they were still taking orders from Paris. The World Bank and IMF were panicking. If other African countries followed Sankara's example and rejected their structural adjustment programs, their debt slavery, the entire system of Western economic domination would collapse. And then there were the African leaders themselves, the corrupt, Western-backed dictators who were getting rich by selling out their own people. Sankara made them look like the traitors they were. Enter Blaise Compaoré, Sankara's childhood friend, his supposed brother in the revolution, but Compaoré had been seduced by Western promises of wealth and power. The French intelligence services had been cultivating him for years, promising him Sankara's job if he could deliver his friend's head. By 1987, the conspiracy was complete. French intelligence agents were meeting secretly with Compaoré. Neighboring dictators like Félix Houphouët-Boigny of Ivory Coast were promising support. The trap was set, all they needed was the right moment to strike. October 15, 1987. A meeting is called at the Council of Ministers building in Ouagadougou. Sankara is told it's urgent, a crisis that requires his immediate attention. It's a lie. It's an ambush. Sankara arrives with just a few bodyguards. He suspects nothing. Why would he? These are his comrades, his brothers in arms, but as soon as he enters the building, heavily armed soldiers surround him. These aren't just any soldiers, they're part of Compaoré's personal guard, trained and equipped by French special forces. Sankara realizes what's happening. But even facing death, he refuses to beg. Witnesses later said he remained calm, dignified, a true revolutionary to the end. The soldiers don't even give him a chance to speak. They open fire immediately, pumping his body full of bullets. 12 rounds tear through Africa's greatest hope, but they don't stop there. They execute his bodyguards too. Anyone who might tell the truth about what really happened. Then they dump Sankara's bullet-riddled body in a shallow grave, like he was nothing more than a common criminal. Within hours, Compaoré appears on radio and television, claiming Sankara died in an unfortunate accident during a spontaneous uprising. The lies begin immediately. The man who had called Sankara his brother had sold him out for 30 pieces of silver, and France had found their new puppet, Blaise Compaoré ruled
Moment
Burkina
des risques,
Faso for
il le
27
savait.
years.
Il faut que ce process
27 years of
ce
corruption,
process se
repression,
fasse
and
et
servitude
qu'il
to French
serve
interests.
d'exemple
Everything Sankara had
pour
built
qu'on
was
comprenne
systematically
l'aide
destroyed.
d'intégrité.
The food
C'était
self-sufficiency
quelqu'un
programs were
qui
abandoned.
aimait les autres.
The women's rights
Et
initiatives were
on
rolled
l'abordait
back.
facilement, que ce
The
soit
country
les
was
femmes,
plunged
les
back into debt
enfants,
slavery to the
les
World
hommes.
Bank and IMF, and the truth about Sankara's murder.
C'est quelqu'un qui
Buried.
avait beaucoup
Anyone who
d'humour.
dared ask questions was
Et
arrested,
il travaillait
tortured,
beaucoup.
or simply disappeared.
Il aimait les
Journalists were
femmes.
silenced.
Thomas Sankara était un
Activists were
panafricaniste.
murdered.
Mission.
Compaoré became one
il
of
faut la
France's most
justice.
reliable African allies,
Il y a des
sending uranium
réparations.
to French nuclear
Des
plants
réparations
while his own
morales.
people
Mais pour
lived
ça,
in
il faut la
poverty.
justice.
For nearly 3
Je pense que moi,
decades,
comme toutes les
Sankara's
familles, on a
grave
besoin
remained
de ça.
unmarked and unknown. His family was forbidden from holding memorial services. His books and speeches were banned. They tried to erase him from history entirely, but you cannot kill an idea. You cannot murder the truth forever. France celebrated their success. They had eliminated the most dangerous threat to their African empire. Other potential revolutionaries got the message loud and clear: challenge the system, and you'll end up like Sankara. The cover-up was complete. The conspiracy had succeeded, or so they thought. The people of Burkina Faso had finally had enough. Compaoré tried to change the constitution to extend his rule, and the entire country exploded in revolution. After 27 years of dictatorship, the puppet was overthrown. Compaoré fled to Ivory Coast, his French protectors unable to save him from his own people's rage, and then the truth began to emerge. Documents were uncovered. Witnesses came forward. The conspiracy that killed Sankara was finally exposed to the light. In 2021, a military tribunal in Burkina Faso finally put Compaoré and his accomplices on trial for Sankara's murder. The evidence was overwhelming: French intelligence, Western backing, premeditated assassination. Compaoré was sentenced to life in prison in absentia. Justice, delayed for over 3 decades, was finally served, and Sankara? His legacy has exploded across Africa and around the world. Young Africans wear his image on t-shirts. His speeches are translated into dozens of languages. Universities teach courses about his revolutionary ideas. He has become exactly what his assassins feared most: a symbol of African independence, dignity, and resistance to Western domination. They killed the man, but they made the idea immortal, from Senegal to South Africa, from Ghana to Ethiopia. A new generation of African leaders is rediscovering Sankara's message: Africa doesn't need Western charity, it needs Western powers to stop stealing African wealth. While revolutionaries as individuals can be murdered, you cannot kill ideas. Thomas Sankara spoke these words, not knowing they would become his epitaph. They murdered him in cold blood because he dared to show Africa what was possible. Because he proved that Africans didn't need to beg for scraps from the West's table, they could build their own table. Today, as France loses its grip on its African empire, as country after country kicks out Western military bases and nationalizes their resources, Sankara's ghost is haunting the halls of power in Paris and Washington. The revolution he started didn't die with him. It's spreading across the continent like wildfire. Justice is still unfolding. The truth is still emerging. And Africa is still rising, land of upright people. Thomas Sankara's dream lives on. If this story moved you, if it made you angry, if it opened your eyes to the truth about how the West maintains its empire, then share it. Make sure everyone knows what they did to Thomas Sankara. Subscribe for more untold stories of African heroes they tried to erase from history. Hit that notification bell. The revolution continues. Which side are you on?